Yeah, so Brian Daboll was introduced yesterday there, Jerry, and it was he did a fine job. But I think that after 3 coaches in a row that lasted 2 years, there is nothing that this man could say or do yesterday that's going to inspire me as a football fan that is watching the Giants and what they're about to do in this new regime. Now, I know Giants fans are overly excited about this. At least most of them, when I see it social media, they are, because anytime I say something about Brian Daboll, about how I'm not really into this hire, it doesn't excite me. I thought they could do better. The fact that they're in a mess of an organization right now that turned to 2 newbies in Shane and Daboll, and then the fact that they're going to keep Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley around, I don't understand why everybody's excited about this. But a lot of them are excited because they think that he's an offensive genius, and they were so sick of how bad the Giants have been offensively. They think he's going to come in and be innovative and turn things around and make them exciting. And maybe he will, but yesterday he did a nice job. There's nothing negative to say about his press conference at all, which, as we know around these parts, is a good thing because we've seen some really unbelievable, off-the-chart bad press conferences here, from Brody Van Wagenen to Mickey Callaway to McAdoo to Gase being the worst. So I will give him credit for that. But let's not also forget that 2 years ago, Giants fans were putting on their shoulder pads and helmets ready to play for Joe Judge after his first press conference.
Well, I'll tell you this. So I watched 2 press conferences yesterday. I watched Brian Daboll, and I watched his on replay because I was out here. And I also saw the Matt Eberflus press conference in Chicago
and
I'm out here.
Both Eberflus and that GM out there in Chicago, neither one of them were inspiring at all.
So that's exactly what I was about to say, was after watching that, which I thought was cringeworthy. I thought it was terrible. And I think, again, they could turn out to be the greatest head coach and GM combination in the history of football. But if I was a Bears fan watching that yesterday, my first thought would have been, oh my God, here we go, another 4 years of nothing because these 2 idiots. And again, they could be great, but it was not a great presentation, at least not in my opinion, having watched these and been to a lot of these live. I took Daboll's, and I said this to Al earlier, I loved it, and it doesn't mean he's going to be a great head coach by any stretch, but he just looked the part. He sounded the part. He was fluid with the media. The one exchange I loved came from Neil Best, actually. That was a great question where he directly asked him, did you try to sell patience to ownership? Now, Joe Judge did that. We've discussed that many times, that I'm going to need time to build this from the ground up and blah, 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 blah. And he directly said, did you ask for patience from ownership? And Daboll goes, no, it's a results-oriented business, and I get that. And, he went on and he kind of expanded on the question and the answer, but I just thought everything he said was spot on what you want to hear. Now, he's got to go out and do it. I get it. But he was... He thought about his answers before he spoke. They asked him about his coaching staff. They asked about what they're going to do in terms of players. And one of his answers was, I got here 5 minutes ago, guys. I still got to hire coaches before I know what we're... So I thought he was outstanding for as much as he could be. And you're right. When Judge was hired, it was, we're going to run through a brick wall for this guy, Mr. Football, no nonsense. Well, we learned that was a lot of nonsense, and he basically told you've got to earn players' trust. You can't just go out there and be this hard ass and think they're going to run through a brick wall for you. So I know what you're saying. I get it. We've been there. We've done that. We need to see it. But I actually liked a lot of what I saw from him yesterday.
And I think that the Giants definitely needed a change. There's no doubt about it. I wasn't calling for Joe Judge to keep his job, but it still feels to me like the Giants think that they have the right players. And this is what's driving me nuts about all of this, is it really does seem like the Giants and John Mara believe that Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley and these wide receivers that they have are the guys that are going to take them out of this abyss, and they just need to fix the offensive line. And how many times had we heard that before? We heard it when Eli Manning was around. We heard it at the beginning of Daniel Jones. This to me, I would feel so much better about where the Giants were right now if Joe Shane came in and said, nobody here has a job. Nobody. I don't care. Like, he came in instead and said, well, Daniel would have more time and be more successful if he had someone block for him, and Saquon would be able to break off some more runs if he had someone block for him. How about these guys aren't any good? And if he came in and said, this team has stunk at a level worse than every other team in the NFL for close to a decade, and you're telling me that anybody on this roster is safe? My ass. I mean, Dave Gettleman basically threw a grenade in the middle of this roster and for years has destroyed it. And Joe Shane should come in and be like, no, we're rebuilding this thing. We're starting over. I mean, sort of like with Joe Douglas and the Jets and Rob Saleh. I mean, they had a miserable beginning to their year, and I didn't like the fact that those guys were all inexperienced as well. But it really seems like the Giants still don't understand what their problems are.
Well, I listen, I'm not going to speak to Shane from the other day, but Daboll did not do that yesterday. He essentially said, we've got to get everybody in, and then we're going to start. He didn't say ground up, but he said we're going to start there by evaluating everybody as we get started. And I think that was the question to the point about where you're at with this roster. And he said, can I just hire my coaching staff first? Yeah. And then we're going to get to work. You're not wrong. I mean, they are what they are. The record is what it is. And in the case of Saquon Barkley, he did run for 1,500 yards his rookie year. It's not like he's a piece of garbage that's never done anything. Yes, the last couple of years, injuries has not gone his way. They have pieces. They do not have complete. The unit's not complete for sure. Daniel Jones may or may not be a good quarterback. But I do think, unless you're going to go out and get Tom Brady, which you're not, Aaron Rodgers, they're not, I think the option is you let him play this thing out, as we discussed the other day. He's playing for a contract. It's a show-me year, because I don't know that right now there's a better – you want Jimmy Garoppolo here as a stopgap quarterback?
No, I know. I want him to draft a quarterback. I do. And what's going to happen – And what's going to happen is, like it happens every single year, you hear this isn't a great quarterback class. This is not one of those classes where quarterbacks are going to be taken in the top 10. And then all of a sudden, the combine happens, the pro days happen, the interviews happen, and these guys get taken. I mean, Zach Wilson. Nobody was talking about Zach Wilson when the Jets beat the Rams last year and they lost out on the number 1 pick and the Jaguars got it. Not a single person the next day called up and said, well, at least Zach Wilson is available.
Right.
What they were saying was, I guess we have to turn our eyes to Justin Fields and see if he's going to be the guy, or what do you do? Or maybe you trade back or whatever. And then all of a sudden, this Zach Wilson momentum happened, and they ended up taking him with the 2nd overall pick. That's going to happen with at least one of these guys this year, probably 2 of them, and I'm hoping to God the Giants pick one. I got to be honest with you, because, we talk about Saquon Barkley's rookie year. Is he ever going to be that good again? My money would be on no, and you have to make those tough decisions. Daniel Jones at his ceiling is what exactly?
Don't know. We still don't know.
But
have no idea.
I can't be living in the I don't knows in a guy in his 4th year. That's the problem. Like Zach Wilson, I could deal with the I don't know in his 2nd year. Nope. It's going to be Daniel Jones' 4th year.
But I think you have to, because of the options that are out there. And that goes with what you want to do. You can still draft a quarterback. Makes all the sense in the world. But I don't think you're just going to just shove him aside for what? Like it's, you've got A and B. Which one do you want?
Well, I mean, I think it's just
like
an
option.
It's a regime change, and you're shoving him aside to show that the stuff that happened under Dave Gettleman is not happening anymore, and we need to move on from some of these terrible draft picks. That's what it says.
Let me ask you this: what if it's that Joe Judge was just a bad coach of the bad coaching staff?
I mean, it could be. I mean, and Joe Judge in that first year. But the problem was there were 2 distinct different years from Joe Judge. And the same thing for Ben McAdoo, too. And this is why it's so hard to, and even Pat Shurmur, you can go back to, Saquon's best year and Daniel Jones' best year were under Pat Shurmur.
I heard Tiki say on Tiki and Tierney a couple weeks ago, and I did not know this, that the Giants had one of the most... not young, but unproven staffs in the NFL, meaning guys that had very little NFL experience. I mean, if that's the case, Joe Judge might be a good X's and O's football guy, but if you don't have the proper staff around you, what are you going to end up being? You're going to end up being what you were. So if what he's saying, I have no reason to think Tiki was wrong in that, makes a lot of sense to why guys regress.
Yeah, I mean, and then obviously he's got to be talking about position coaches, because I mean, Patrick Graham is someone that is
That's exactly what I'm talking about.
Highly regarded, who they're going to keep in the organization. And Jason Garrett was there for most of the time, and obviously he's got experience like crazy, head coach, coordinator, and everything else. So I mean, maybe. I mean, that could be the case, but I mean, I don't know. I'm more of a talent. Players are carrying this league more than ever, and chances are if your team is bad, it's because you don't have enough talent. There's times that you see teams like the perfect example. Justin Herbert and the Chargers probably should have made the playoffs this year. Yep. And it was disappointing because of the year that he had. And Brandon Staley put him in some weird spots. And maybe next year he comes back and he's not so analytical and whatever it was. Like, that's a team that you feel like, maybe coaching might have held back the great player a little bit. But generally that doesn't happen in today's NFL. Like, you look at Zach Taylor's first 2 years in Cincinnati compared to the Cincinnati Bengals right now. I mean, what's the difference? The difference is he's got a quarterback who's all world, who's got that it factor, is a championship caliber guy.
A wide receiver that catches the ball too.
Right, exactly, too. And a superstar wide receiver where they took a big chance on a guy in the first round. They could have gone offensive line. I mean, their offensive line, this is the Bengals are the perfect example of what we're talking about. And Boomer brought this up too. He made me go look at all of the Bengals offensive linemen and where they came from. Undrafted free agents, 6th-round pick, 7th-round pick. Joe Burrow got sacked 9 times in a divisional game against the Titans, and they still won. But here the Giants are talking about how as long as all we have to do is fix the offensive line, and Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley are going to be Hall of Famers. Stop.
If he got sacked 9 times against the Chiefs, they would have lost that game by 40 points. Ryan Tannehill was terrible in that game.
But the point was he overcame that. And I understand we knew that the Titans were a team that was offensively challenged, even with Derrick Henry coming back. But, I mean, he's
also got the benefit of a kicker that doesn't miss. I mean, listen, he's awesome. I am not taking anything away from him. And that one play with Jones riding his back, and it was a huge play in the game. I agree with you. I am not disagreeing with you. But there are other factors to it as well. And the Giants don't have any of it.
No, I know.
That's where you're right, that it's a build-up from the ground up, and it's got to start somewhere. And that's where I'll come back to what he said yesterday. Let me pick my coaches. Let's get off and running, and then we'll see where we are. Because right now, I don't even think he knows where he is.
I really hope that Joe Shane was just talking about Saquon Barkley and Daniel Jones, because saying anything else would have been headline-grabbing and maybe too much earth-shattering for the Giants at that moment. Because if he would have came out and said, listen, Daniel Jones is showing me nothing, and Saquon Barkley is never healthy, and the guy picking a running back number 2 overall, we were all laughing about that in Buffalo. Oh my God,
that would have been headline grabbing,
right? I'm just hoping that he took the easy way out and is saying to himself, "We got to get rid of these guys."
I'll tell you, Daboll was very lukewarm with Barkley.
It was
the very last question. I forget who asked it, but they said, we sat here for 25 minutes. What about the running back, Saquon Barkley? And he basically said, great talent. We'll see. There was no commitment. There was no nothing. It was, I know where he comes from, good program. He said his son's a graduate assistant at Penn State, so he's gotten all the information on him. He said, yeah, good player. But he did not say anything more than that. All right, very lukewarm, I would say, is a good word.
Good. I like to hear that.
Thank you for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe. And don't forget to hit the red bell so you're notified when we have new content.